Welcome everyone. Looking forward to a little lunch and learn today, and we're focusing on sustainability, particularly for websites and digital products. And the idea is how we marry up sustainability, but without compromising on user experience. Today, I'm joined by our design lead, Ryan. Welcome, Ryan. Thanks for joining me.
Morning, Sam.
You're also the guy in charge of our slides, so I'm going to be really nice to you, and hopefully we can keep up with each other as we go. Just a little bit of an introduction. I'm the managing director here at ThoughtQuarter. As I said, Ryan is our design lead. At ThoughtQuarter, we see ourselves as the tech partner of change makers. Change makers like you, whether that's individuals trying to make a difference or organizations using technology to build a better world. We only do three things: strategy, design, and software development. And this idea of sustainability, accessibility, and usability really runs through all three of things. So we're going to try and keep our session to exactly 30 minutes today. I know it's Friday. I really appreciate you sharing a little bit of your lunch hour with us. And please keep your comments coming through the chat as we go through. And we'll either pick up questions during the discussion or we'll pick them up at the end. So what are we going to be taking away from our discussion today? Number one, clarity. It is one of our values, so we're going to say it again. Clarity on what website sustainability actually means. There's a lot of noise out there. We're going to share our view on it and how we use it to help our clients differentiate themselves in the marketplace. Secondly, the actual principles of how you do it. Oh, and some balloons just for good luck. Sorry about that. An understanding of sustainable web design principles. And number three, the actual nuts and bolts of it. Practical tips and advice to support your website sustainability efforts. We're also going to touch on how we tie those things into your wider organizational sustainability goals and strategy. But perhaps before we get too far into it, let's just take a step back. Why does website sustainability even matter? Why is this a conversation even worth having? Well, our definition of what website sustainability means is designing, developing, and maintaining software solutions in a way that minimizes the impact on the environment. Now, that sounds like a really simple throwaway statement. But when you think about all the different ways in which you can have an impact on the environment, this is all the way down to how users use your products, how they access them, what the carbon footprint of your hosting is, and so on. This becomes a really wide topic. But what's the commercial driver? Why does it make sense to talk about this stuff? Well, here are some stats that we pulled out as we were discussing this idea internally. Now, if you're in the B2C world, a PwC survey in 2024 said that 80% of consumers are willing to pay a premium for sustainable goods. 80%. That's 4 out of 5 people. And the same report found that on average, consumers were willing to pay between 9 and 12% extra for goods, products, or services that had a compelling and believable sustainability story. So that gives you access to a market that is willing to pay a premium for your products and services. On the B2B side, buyers are almost 3 times more likely, 2.7 times more likely to make a long-term commitment to sustainable suppliers. So these might be suppliers that help them in their sustainability efforts, or suppliers that have a really clearly laid out sustainability strategy and sustainability approach. Now, whether you're in B2B or you're in B2C, the good news, or the bad news, depending which way you look at it, is that 75% of people will make a judgment on your credibility based on your website design. That's 3/4 of people will look at your website and decide whether they believe your sustainability credentials, or they don't. Now, what's really terrifying is how quickly that judgment is made. The blink of an eye, 50 milliseconds or 0.05 seconds. That's the interval of time that you have to make your sustainability credentials believable to 75% of people, so that they might be willing to either commit long-term to you or pay a premium for your services. So as you can see, this is definitely a conversation worth having. How do we do it? Ryan, perhaps you can help us.
I'll try. Thanks for the intro. Yeah, some really sort of cool, valid points there, which adds to its importance, I think, as well. And some of those sort of data stats that you just presented there, Sam, as well. I think they're only going to be going up as well, which is again terrifying or exciting, depends which way you want to spin it. But yeah, it's a time for change, really, and sort of not delaying that change. But I guess before we sort of do anything, sort of jumping into sort of sustainability, I think it's really important, just from like to set some sort of grounded foundations and grounded knowledge around those design principles. Then you've got this underpinning principles, which you can then overlay the sustainability model on top of. I think without that, it's quite easy to get caught up in buzzwords, the noise, everything that's being swirling on around you, without that sort of founding knowledge. So how sort of how we, and similar to what Sam said previously, sort of we've got our own definitions of different things. And we presented our definition of what for TQ of what website sustainability means for us. But in terms of our principles, at least, of how we approach sort of web design, it's purposeful and it's responsive. Product design is the angle that we approach. I think it's just a slight sort of change of mindset. When you think of a website, you might think of a traditional model of a hero page, a about page, a contact form with endless fields in, whatever it may be. But the word product, it just has a sense of functionality to it, and it shifts that mindset. So that's typically how we approach our design principles, really. And then they deliver against a set of objectives. Those objectives are dependent completely on brief, client, etc., revenue, leads, email captures, etc. The list is really, really endless, but there's some flexibility there. And then user expectations in terms of, one, from a UX point of view, is that expectation or that experience rather online delivering against the goal, that the foundation goal that that user has landed on the website to do, and then secondly, in terms of the look and feel, making sure the design sort of look and feel is consistent across all the touch points that you'd sort of expect. So once you've got that grounded knowledge, then we're in a position and a place to sort of overlay some sort of sustainability principles on top of that. So efficiency, in terms of, can we get that user from A to B in 2 clicks rather than 5 clicks, 4 clicks, 6 clicks, whichever it may be. Resource consciousness. So by that we mean videos is a good example to work from. Videos are great, we know that, but we also know that videos are expensive. So there is there's a feeling sometimes that you might have this expansive creative asset bank, and you might want to throw everything at the website and hope that it sticks. And in actual fact, that video, for example, might be worthwhile on social media. A static might do the same job, or either the job even better on a website, and that just sort of supports the efficiency of your system, the code, and how quick your website is essentially getting served. And then sustainability commitments, which is just an overarching statement which pins everything together, comes into your storytelling, and everything around that. So like I said, that's how sort of we build our sustainable principles on top of our sort of standardized sort of web design principles.
Yeah, I don't know. We were talking about it while we were prepping for this call, weren't we? That for us, we don't really have separate design guidelines and sustainability design guidelines. It's just that good design has now become sustainable design. And that's probably one of the key takeaways for our listeners today, that actually this is stuff that we should be baking in to our creative process and into our storytelling, because those stats that we looked at earlier, that the real difference comes when you put that sustainability storytelling front and center of your online channels, not when it's something that's kind of relegated away as a second thought. Is that about right?
Completely agree. I mean, if I just jump back, this is a slide, not the title. This is a slide that we use on our sort of credentials deck. Who's to say this time next year, in 6 months' time, this might just be our default slide. It quite possibly could be. So yeah, you're completely right. It's going to be a lot more prevalent, sort of going forward, rather than just edge cases. It's going to be the norm. I get the feeling.
Yeah. So how do we do it?
Which is why we have come up with this this sort of sustainability framework, like a 5-step sort of action plan or takeaway for the audience to sort of go away with, and sort of work through at their own pace. Which, you know, I'm not going to take credit for the copy around that supports this. I think it's great, but it's a really nice angle, which you tried to approach here in terms of. It's quite easy to get caught up in the buzz and the noise around sustainability, carbon free, carbon zero, whichever it may be. But yes, that's important, but as soon as you turn around to senior management, senior stakeholders, and say you've got this really cool initiative you want to go work away with, the first thing they will care about, not always, but more often than not, I would have thought would be the profit implications and the commercial implications around it. So the magic and the stardust is in that middle point. Either way, one way, and the other one sort of falls at its feet a little bit. So we're trying to find that sort of that middle ground here. And like I said, we've got this 5-point framework in place, which we think does that.
Yeah, and to anyone who's been involved in kind of commercial planning or business growth strategies, etc., this framework is pretty familiar. You know, this is how we would approach any other commercial challenge. And that's probably one of the second key takeaways to bear in mind for today. This is exactly the same as any other challenge. Bringing sustainability front and center of your digital channels has to be approached just like any other business problem, doesn't it? You know, you figure it out, you create a vision, and then follow the plan.
Yeah, exactly. And it's exciting as well. I think I was just thinking then it's I don't know, it used to feel a bit more of like a daunting world, right? Like the world's got to shift, the world's changing. It's everything you hear around sort of carbon footprints can be sort of quite negative, but like negative connotations. But it's you know, briefs like this comes through the door. It's exciting. It's new. It's different. It's the way it's going, the way the world is going. So yeah, it's not a subject which hopefully we're trying to sort of to do today, trying to break down that sort of stigma. Really, it's not a subject to be daunted by. It's something to to be excited by. It's not to say it won't be challenging, of course, but yeah, exactly. And we could, and this sort of structures and well, is sort of the structure for the remaining of the session, really. And you could quite easily have a session on each of these points going forward, which we might well do, you know, after this session. So these are just sort of snippets and takeaways and insights, just to get sort of creative juices going more than anything. Like I said, you could spend a lot longer delving into each one of these, but we just want to sort of touch on each of these just so you get a full picture of the opportunities that you've got and how you potentially should be approaching a you know, sustainable brief as such. So first and foremost, it's obviously really important to have that sort of starting point, and defining success. For us, when we go into our discovery sessions, it's inevitably one of the first questions that we sit down with the client to get an understanding of what success looks like. And it's surprisingly a question which can catch people off guard. It's when it's in black and white and plain and simple, it can catch you off guard a little bit. But it's important just to know what success looks like. But obviously, before that, you need that fundamental sort of baseline understanding of what that looks like. So going into some sort of like auditing framework, which we'll all be used to in the sense of a UX audit, or you know, if there's any marketers on the on the call watching, you know, you're auditing your Facebook profiles, your Instagram, whatever it may be. So it's that same principle can be adopted inside the world of sustainability. And then then it informs your sort of decision making again, like you would have an audit output. Which of these 10, 15, 20 things are the quick win opportunities where they'll be relatively quick to work through, but then give us the biggest impact and return on investment in that short period of time before looking at longevity and going forward. And then it sets gives you those realistic goals to sort of work towards, and those achievable goals. As I was reading that I was rolling back the years to the SMART model, which back in my university days was specific, measurable, whatever, something achievable, realistic, and time. There we go. It wasn't all wasted. But that principle thing's true. Who would have thought?
I know we were chatting, I think it was yesterday, sometimes we'll do that like press release activity as part of this. I think we say to people, it's the project's gone really, really well. You've won a government award. You need to write a press release for what you're going to read out on the steps of 10 Downing Street when you receive your award. And it's amazing how forcing it down into half a page of A4 really brings out
100%.
Those key drivers and those key nuggets that make success worthwhile.
100%.
If you don't take anything else away from today, go and Google the press release activity. It's a brilliant one.
And remind yourself of SMART objectives. There you go. Those are insights. I think we can wrap it up now. No, better not. Secondly, so once you've got that sort of that starting point, then it's important to have that sort of shared mission and shared passion, I guess, as well for what we're trying to achieve. Your website is one touch point, arguably the most important touch point across a whole range of I guess offline and online touch points, and the story you're trying to tell. The website won't do it all. Granted, it will have a big say in it, just the amount of traffic inevitably that lands on the site, but it should feed into a bigger and a wider objective, a company-wide, company, charity, organization, whichever it may be. So it's that shared vision, which is super important. That obviously then unlocks resource for yourself, for if you need to bring a specialist agency consultant in or whatever it may be. So it gives you the time to sort of approach to sort of brief and the objective you're trying to achieve, and then support and advocacy in terms of it just ensures the stakeholders of the business and business leaders are aware of what's going on and utilizing. Again, this isn't, yes, it's your website, but if you can leverage your business leaders there across their social media platforms, across their networking events, whatever it may be, it's that shared vision, that shared story, which will just sort of feed into everything really. And then we can sort of bring it back to the website really. So once we've got that starting point, once we've got a buy-in and a green light essentially to go ahead, and then it's looking at actioning some of those first steps out of that audit, just to get the ball rolling and just to get things moving. So in terms of why it's important, we've got a sort of, it brings some immediate impact in terms of your, and these are just some sort of typical expected tasks that we've seen over our time. Completely different across clients, across websites. Some websites might have great image optimization, but they might have all this redundant code in the background, outdated code, outdated tech, whatever it may be, which just slows the process down, and vice versa. It could be the other way around. But typically, you look at your image optimizations and removing of old media files, videos, whichever they may be, which just don't need to be there. And just because you can't see them on the front end doesn't mean that it's not weighing your system down, essentially. It helps to sort of build momentum. So as soon as we can start to visually see some improvements across the website, it just feeds into that that shareholder sort of buying, and justifies why we are, why we're here and why we are where we are, and just gives you that sense of sort of longevity to the project going forward. And then inevitably the quick wins. It's the cost effective task that we sort of tend to action then, before again we maybe have to bring in a consultant to revisit our tech stack to whichever it may be. But some of those, these early tasks of image optimizations, removing tasks, etc., typically a day sweep of a WordPress website surprisingly goes a long way.
Yeah, it's the 80-20 rule, isn't it? I think we've had a couple of ones recently where just a simple or relatively simple, whether it's hosting migration or putting a CDN in or just changing a few settings, it actually results in the project stakeholders, they go on the website and it physically feels faster. And you can't put a price on that, can you? When your stakeholders can see the difference at the end of week 1 or week 2, that's exactly where your project starts to get the backing for the more strategic changes that you then need to do.
Exactly that. And then I guess we are looking at, design in a sense, obviously a relatively sort of broad word that we're using here, but it's just efficiency within our sort of design systems that we look to visit. And what we mean by this is, a reusable component library. If we have a really vast and expansive component library, in actual fact, we revisit the website and we are only using 50% of those components, then the other ones don't really need to be there. I'm not saying remove them completely from your design files at least, but certainly from the website it might be a case of not needed. And is there another module across one of the other pages which can do something? So just being a little bit clever and coy and about sort of the components that we're using. Every single web page doesn't need to be different. It's really surprising that when we might design out a website, push it live, every page looks and feels completely different, and then we revisit it 12 months later. We then soon realize that actually something worked really well over here, so we're going to repurpose it and whatever it might be in another screen, another page. So if it's not needed, then don't be afraid to kill it in the nicest world.
I hope you don't mind, but I'm going to get a picture of this because this is going to be a future LinkedIn rant. It's a subject that's really close to my heart, and I think too often, and maybe it's because I come from a kind of richer design background in previous careers, but I think too often design is seen as the embellishment of a project or of a proposition. Whereas actually what you're talking about here is the opposite. Design is about finding the most efficient and visually pleasing way of communicating that proposition to the people who need to know about it.
100%.
And I know we've whinged at length about design systems and reusable design patterns, etc., but they make such a massive difference when there's that well-defined design library to call back on. The sustainable aspect of a project becomes so much easier to roll in.
Exactly that. And then it's having a flexible system as well. So in terms of for one of our clients, we run their website for them, and then a few months ago a potential app brief came through the door, and it's actually because we had this flexible system already in place for the website within one of our many Figma files, which probably needs a bit of a clean up, but it will do for now. We've got these components which just speed up that process. Granted, they might not all work like for like as they would do in these different scenarios, but equally it's a time saver, and then it feeds into that consistency across different touch points, etc. So like design systems, it's a buzzword, but one that's most definitely not going away, and for good reason. And then I think as well, just to quickly touch on in terms of it's the UX is fundamental to everything and anything that we do. So efficient user interactions that equals reduced number of server requests, essentially code, and then less server load time. So in terms of like site speed, again, going back to that point, if a task can be achieved with 2 clicks, with 1 click, then it should be. Gone are the days where we're delivering websites which are 50 pages long because we think we need a big website. really, really, really not the case anymore. Which is good for me. You don't have to design 50 pages. And then, step 5, like not standing still, really, just keeping the momentum moving, rinse and repeat. And this goes back to your starting point in terms of, say your website was efficiency was an E, for example, we got it up to C. Okay, so how can we get it up to B and an A, etc., etc. Just continually sort of moving forward. Ensuring we're not, this is focused around UX and design inevitably, but your tech is grounded, everything that it sits within, and that's not my world, and that's someone else is better suited to sort of have that conversation. But ensuring your tech stack and your CMS, etc., is up to date. Whatever you do from a visual point of view will only ever be as good as the technology that it sits on. So that's sort of important as well to keep that going, and then embrace change, which will happen if, depending on how serious you are and how far you take it. But going back to earlier points, if you are passionate about what you're doing, then it should be front and center of everything that you do, not just your website, but across your PR, across your media, across your whatever it may be, your networking, and embrace it and be excited about it, because spoiler alert, it's not going away anytime soon. And then
carry on. I was just going to say, we've got a couple of questions that have come in, so I'm really keen to make time for those. So I think we'll call it there, but you'd already moved on to key takeaways, so I'll let you carry on.
Ahead of the curve. So just sort of summarizing some of those sort of takeaways, which we just talked through in terms of having that sort of shared vision, shared mission, shared passion, the storytelling that goes alongside the actual application is as important as the next thing. Keeping your sort of core website objectives, so not getting too caught up in the hype, understanding that in its simplest form, a user will land on your website to do something. It's our job within design to allow them to do that, regardless of the brief or the message we're trying to overlay on top of that. That's a challenge, and that's not to be forgotten. And then, like I said, just embracing that change, whilst continually sort of being across your reporting and making sure things don't dip and it's too late and backtracking or whatever it may be. But got to be brave with it. Got to be brave with anything, which is a given, really.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Ryan. Really appreciate that, and really appreciate the thought that's gone into the framework there. So I'm going to I'm going to go with the most awkward question first, if that's all right. And we may or may not get time for the others, but I think this one sums up the theme of what's come through. How long does it take to see results when you make your website more sustainable? And you may not say it depends.
Can I say? No, I can't say that. I was going along the lines of a piece of string. It's different from client to client, inevitably, different from brief to brief, website, project to project, like anything that we do within design and tech. I think the best way to sort of spin it would be similar questions. Inevitably, I'm going back to my early media days when I was a young, sprightly SEO executive, and people would say, "How quickly is this going to take? And what do I see results?" If I knew the answer, I wouldn't be here today. I'll be in the Seychelles doing something else, but I'm not. So it's if you were to work through those quick wins, and again, those quick wins would be completely separate across clients, across websites. Somewhere between 4 to 6 weeks, you'd like to expect to sort of see some improvements. But then the magic happens. It's almost like a compound effect. If you were to revisit your site low speed, for example, not only does your website become more sustainable, Google picks it from SEO point of view. So it's everything sort of just builds and builds and builds. If you're going to be increasing your ranking on Google, you're going to get more traffic to the website, get more traffic to the website, and you've still got that underpinning UX principles in place, more conversions, leads, whatever that may be. So yeah, like I said, you expect to see some quick wins relatively quickly, but the magic happens in a long-term project.
Yeah, and that conversion point, I think, is probably the quickest potential win. Typically, making your website more sustainable makes it easier to use, so you're more likely to get more leads, conversions, whatever it is, from your current users than you did before. That's often when we see the quickest payback. Thank you. I promised I'd get to other questions if we got time. We are up to time, and I pride myself on keeping these things on time. So thank you very much, Brian. Thank you to all of you who've joined us today. Please keep an eye on our LinkedIn page for the next one of these, and we will, of course, be sending out the deck and any other supporting materials. Thank you for joining us today. Have a great day.
Thanks, man. See you. Bye.